What's up, guys? My name is Ted, and welcome back to this new YouTube podcast format on the Idaho Forum. This is part two of the intro, so if you haven't already watched part one, I recommend you obviously to go back and do that first, because that will make this make a whole lot more sense. So let's jump right back into the defense theory. The last we spoke, we had established that it's not Mr. Koberger's car circling 1122 King. So the homicides obviously did not occur, according to the defense theory, in the prosecution's 4 a.m. sole assailant time slot. So then we need to go back and say, okay, is there any reasonable forensic evidence that would suggest that these crimes might have occurred in a different time slot? Enter the ultra critical 1112 King audio. It's important to note straight off the bat that this is the same camera, it's the same audio that the prosecution and the MPD relied on in their own probable cause affidavit. From 4 a.m. all the way to 4:17, we barely hear any noise at all. We don't hear any screams, we don't hear cries for help, any kinds of struggle, nothing to indicate that there is very violent crimes occurring in a home just 50 feet away from that camera. However, on that same camera from about 225 to 250, we hear a tremendous amount of very violent and very disturbing noise. We hear many male voices being very aggressive and clearly upset with others. That's not party noise. We hear lots of screaming. We hear lots of crying, what sounds like wailing. We also hear what sounds like thuds, indicating that second lethal force weapon inflicting blunt force trauma wounds onto Ms. Gonsalves. In short, we hear all of the noise and the components one would expect to hear in a crime of this magnitude by multiple assailants and multiple weapons. Yet we're supposed to believe, according to the prosecution's theory, that these were super quick and super quiet attacks. A sole assailant enters that home, slashing four victims over 150 times, and then beating one until she's unrecognizable. And we're supposed to believe there's not one scream that entire time. That just doesn't seem plausible to me at all. And it doesn't end there. Thanks to Dr. Turvey, we now know there's unknown hair not only found in Ethan's right hand, but also on his bed frame. And we've seen imagery of that, potential imagery of that, which would likely also suggest that there was some type of active struggle between Ethan and his assailants prior to being ended. Again, contrary to what we were told to believe by the prosecution, was that Ethan was likely passed out and drunk the entire time. So again, we're supposed to believe that Ethan wasn't crying out in distress or screaming in pain while his rear leg was being incised, or while he was sustaining those scalp wounds, those brutal scalp wounds. We don't hear any male screams at all after the 4 a.m. hour, but we do on that audio as soon as it commences right after 225. We hear something that's straight out of a horror film at 227. The forensic reality is, over 3.5 years later, we have no physical evidence and zero proof of life for any of those four victims after 4 a.m. The only real evidence we have is the testimony from Ms. Mortensen, which we already know from Dr. Turvey and Ms. Taylor is loaded with falsehoods and outright lies. In my mind, the when of these crimes clearly shifted over to the 2 a.m. hour when this new digital forensic evidence was released to the public late last year. The pretty much at 4 a.m. timeline is 100% fabrication and lies, and is an alibi for those inside that home in the 2 a.m. hour committing these homicides.